How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez and Dave Meltzer here. Wrestling Observer Radio, April 30, 2018. Figure4online.com/WrestlingObserver.com. Got a lot to get into here today. Last show was on Friday. We reviewed the Greatest Royal Rumble show. And I guess the first thing to talk about here today is fallout from that show, leading into Raw tomorrow. Dave, what's happening?
Oh, there's a ton of stuff that happened after the show. There was an apology by the Saudi Arabian sports minister regarding the inappropriate stuff.
Music video.
The music video. They showed Carmella in a bathing suit, and the guys in the crowd, there was definitely a pop in the crowd, and they said that was, it violated standards, and I don't sense that it has anything to do with as far as future dealings, but I'm sure that they were not happy with WWE.
They weren't. They even said in the statement that they had told WWE not to do any of this, and they did.
I'm sure that it was an oversight from WWE.
I'm sure it was, too. I just thought it was funny that they threw him under the bus to a degree.
Oh, they completely threw him under the bus. Yeah. This is just a couple of days before the show. There was a health club that was closed down. It might have even been a chain of health clubs, but there was a health club closed down because there was a video that played of a woman working out.
She was training. She was in tight spandex and a top, and her hair was down.
Yeah, and that's not allowed there.
No,
so they shut the whole clubs down. So it's just local standards. I mean, that's the deal. Whatever.
So is there any truth to the story that they're going back in, I guess, November, or...
They're supposed to go in November to Riyadh, yeah.
Okay, so that's official. Well, it's not official, but that's believed to be happening.
They announced that at the show.
Okay.
Before the show started, they announced that to the people that were there, yeah. They didn't announce it on to us, and they have not officially... WWE has not officially announced it themselves, but it was announced it was announced at the show. So that's certainly the plan. Everybody was tired. It was a 18-hour trip or so, depending on where you were coming from. Could be, anywhere from 15 to 20 hours, depending on where guys were coming from. That's just the flying time, not including layovers and stuff. For a lot of people, the travel was even longer than that, going there. Pretty much most people... Some people arrived people arrived at various different times, but most people arrived at the end, the people that weren't working on the set and things who were actually there for, some people were there for a couple of weeks, some people were there for a week. But most of the talent came in, worked jet-lagged, worked pretty quick after that. It was, I believe that... let me think about this, the start of the call time and the end of the show was about 13 hours. So it was 13 hours that day. And then as soon as they were done, they were taken to the airport, which was jammed, even though it was the middle of the night when they left, or actually in some cases the next morning, and flew back. Everyone flew back to New York for the most part because of Raw, and they were supposed to connect in New York to go to Montreal, and their flight was canceled. So a lot of people then who were on Raw, the ones who were on SmackDown didn't have this problem, but the ones who were on Raw, many of them, if not most, then had to drive from New York to Montreal, which is not a short drive after all that. So there's going to be some really exhausted people on tomorrow's show. I'm trying to think what other fallout there was. So the reason they had the sumo guy, now this is actually kind of a funny story, but so the Prince who wanted the show, when he was talking to Vince McMahon or whoever it was that he was talking to, when they were making the deal, he said that the guys he wanted on the show, he listed a bunch of names, but I guess the key names among talent were Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker, and Yokozuna.
The Ultimate Warrior, you say?
Yes, and Yokozuna.
Okay.
So that's probably why they got the sumo guy, because...
So Yokozuna, I mean, Warrior did, to be fair, died just a couple of years ago, but Yokozuna's been dead for a long, long time.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that. So
He doesn't know that?
he didn't know that, no. So that's the ones he wanted. So I think that's why they got the sumo. I don't know that 100% fact, but it has been, that is the word that it went around as far as in WWE, that Vince felt compelled to get somebody who looked like Yokozuna. They didn't tell him it was Yokozuna, but they figured since he wants Yokozuna, we're going to give him something like Yokozuna.
So who replaced Warrior? Was that Mojo Rawley?
I have no
All
idea.
hyped?
I have no idea who that was. Maybe they didn't have a replacement for Warrior, so they just brought in some jack guys from, maybe that's Dan Matha, I don't know. But who knows? They didn't really have an adequate replacement for Ultimate Warrior, I don't think. But they did bring in Undertaker, obviously. I'm trying to think what other things happened there. Corey Graves. He said what a lot of people were privately thinking, but you weren't supposed to say that. It was bad. It was tough for the announcers, like we mentioned before. I mean, number one, you could tell all the mental errors, but also being forced to say all those things that, whether they wanted to or not, puts a lot of pressure on you. Knowing probably that people are not going to be reacting well to it probably didn't make them too happy. It's their job. So, it was just, I can see why he had a bad show. They all had bad shows. There was, so the rule was that nobody could talk about Sami Zayn. So, that was just one of the rules. They had a booklet. Lawler brought this up, that they sent all the announcers this booklet of all the things you can and can't do. So they had to study, what they had to say, what they couldn't say, customs, a lot of stuff that also didn't have to do with announcing, just different things that, that you can and can't do when you're there. I'm sure actually Lawler probably needed to read up on that, because God knows the stuff that he might say. You know what I mean? It could be tough for him if he would talk like he does on his podcast. He probably wouldn't.
Surprised they even brought him in, actually, now that I think about it. That's most of his material.
Yeah, but they had to bring him in because the Prince liked him.
I see.
Yeah, the Prince wanted the guy with the crown there.
The guy with the crown. You sure he wasn't thinking about Harley Race?
The announcer with the crown.
Okay.
Well, the thing is on that, they wanted the announcer with the crown and the announcer with the black hat. So now I guess it's probably just as well, but if you remember, Lawler was supposed to announce the show, not the pregame show. And they announced that publicly when they first announced the show itself, that Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler would be announcing the show. And I guess it's because of what the Prince wanted. And then, I don't know, they just made a call, and I don't know. It's probably just as well. I don't know that anyone would have been good for that show. With all the restrictions and everything like that, and everyone walking on eggshells, it was a tough deal. It's a tough deal for everybody involved. So just the travel for one day. It's the job, but that's tough travel. It's always tough travel, but that's tougher than usual.
On the WWE.com website, nothing for Raw tomorrow. The entire preview is just about what happened at the Greatest Royal Rumble, so...
What happened at the Greatest Royal Rumble? Did anything happen?
Well, they're just talking about how Braun won.
Which was probably
Lesnar
the right
beat
call.
Roman. And the era of wokenness has begun. And the Architect left Saudi Arabia as the Intercontinental Champion.
So McIntyre and Ziggler should beat those guys quick. No one has told me that. That's just my feeling. Or not so quick, but it shouldn't be right away.
They should be next.
They should be next,
Yeah.
Not too quick, because if it's right away, it would kind of kill them. But I think that should be the direction that they're going.
They've already announced the Samoa Joe Roman Reigns match, so it doesn't make a lot of sense tomorrow for them to announce another Brock versus Roman match, unless they just want to change the title on Raw. But I can't imagine them holding it off for WrestleMania to change it on Raw.
No, I know Brock wasn't booked on the show. Now, I had mentioned Ronda not being booked on the show. I shouldn't say that. Ronda was not, on the ads that I saw, there was no Ronda. But in fact, in the local market, they are advertising Ronda for the show.
Well, it does say here, who will dare step to Ronda Rousey? So she's in the preview.
Yeah, well, that's Mickie James, right? Probably set that up.
Yeah, I presume so.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's the,
they're doing house shows, so I presume they're Backlash.
And they also set up the angle on the TV last week at the end of the show. So it could be a tag like Ronda and Natty against Mickie James and Alexa Bliss. No, it couldn't be because Alexa Bliss is wrestling Nia Jax. But you could maybe Mickie James and somebody else. But perhaps just a quick single. It'd probably be, I mean, you could do that. But they have most of that show. Most of the Backlash show is pretty much done. It's Reigns and Joe, Nakamura and AJ again. Alexa's match, Charlotte and Carmella. Trying to think what are the other matches that they've said. Miz and Seth for the Intercontinental. Let's see. Is it?
All right, here's the whole card. We've got Rollins, Miz, Roman Reigns, Samoa Joe, Nia Jax, Alexa Bliss, Carmella and Charlotte.
Right.
Daniel Bryan, Big Cass.
Yes, lovely.
And AJ Nakamura.
Yeah, and they'll probably add on SmackDown, the Intercontinental title or the U.S. title match. I should say something. So that would be, what would be the Intercontinental? What's match are we missing there?
U.S. Championship. Jeff Hardy.
Jeff Hardy's is with
Randy Orton.
Jeff Hardy, Randy Orton, and maybe Shelton Benjamin, or just Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton. Yeah. That's how they were pretty much pushing that on TV. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this New Japan show here. We have a new Intercontinental Champion as Tetsuya Naito beat Minoru Suzuki to win the title. One Destino. What do you think of this match?
It's kind of weird. I thought the show was weak. The whole undercard, it felt like every match was going along fine, and then it ended with like no build up, like out of nowhere.
That sounds kind of like the main event, actually.
Yeah. Well, no, the main event dragged forever, and then it ended out of nowhere.
Yes.
I thought some of it was the crowd. The crowd was tough. But yeah, I just didn't think anything really clicked strongly. The best stuff I think on the show might have been the angle with Okada and Tanahashi to build up their match this week, the championship match. I thought that the tag team title match with Evil and Sonata against Archer and Smith, I thought that like they set up and told a good story. You know what it was they set up and told. There was a lot of attempts at storytelling that the crowd wasn't buying. It was almost like they were trying to do. Yeah, that's what it was. That's essentially what it was. But the so like I think I don't know. Nobody seemed like crisp either. I guess some of the undercard guys were, but their matches would just end. And yeah, the main event just didn't. It's like there were parts of the main event that were really good, and they worked on. It's like Suzuki worked on Naito's knee over and over, but I felt that so often he had submissions on for way too long.
Yes,
and Naito wasn't getting out, and even though he sold the knee like crazy most of the match, it was just too long in the submissions. Like there was a choke near the end where I'm just sitting there going like, this choke's been on forever and he's not out. What the hell's going on? It's like, so I just felt that they, it just didn't click. It just didn't click strong.
Like sometimes you can do a match where a guy's stuck in a hold and like it should be over, but he just barely gets to the ropes and you're like, God, that guy just held on. That was awesome.
They did that a couple of times.
But in this match, it was sort of like, what's going on with Suzuki? Like, why is he not finishing these? It's been way too long.
I agree.
Like it hurt him, more than it made Naito feel like, man, this guy is just like a superhero right here.
I agree completely. I agree. I thought that Suzuki got all those holds on him, and he just got him on. It's like with, I think they were trying to do like what worked with Zack Sabre, but with Zack Sabre, what he does is he goes from hold to hold to hold really quickly. So he doesn't have one hold on for a long period of time. So when you go from hold to hold and the guy's screaming and selling a new body part, it's like you can do that rather than hold on for a long period of time. Because then it's like, well, how come this hold's not finishing the guy when these are all great submission holds? But especially the choke near the end. And they were like 20 plus minutes deep in the match, way over 20, and he gets the choke and he's just holding it, and it's like, it was just too long. So
when I saw the result of this match, I mean, obviously at some point somebody's got to beat Okada, and Suzuki had he's had such a great year so far that I saw the result of this and I thought, well, maybe they're going to take the title off him, and eventually he's going to win. But then when I watched the match, it was like, say the guy to beat Okada.
Not based on this showing.
No. So if that was like the idea, I mean, it didn't work.
Well, it's like he's doing all this. I mean, he probably had probably 80% of the match. I mean, he was dominating the match, and then it's like one Destino. It's like you didn't. It's even though the match was over 30 minutes. That when he did that move, it's like you weren't ready for that move to be the win at all. I mean, they had some great exchanges towards the finish. There was certain points in the match that were really good, but I just thought that, and Suzuki was all bloodied up. But yeah, I thought I actually was my thought on this show was very similar to the Greatest Royal Rumble in the sense that if you looked at the lineup on paper, it looked pretty good. But almost every match under-delivered. And in this one, I would say the same thing. It's like pretty much every match on the show I thought would be better than it was. Not that anything was bad, but certainly nothing was great. I would say it was, I could see, I don't know, by New Japan standards, I would say thumbs down. I mean, I could see thumbs in the middle. But I can't go thumbs up with it. It just wasn't that good of a show.
All right, take us through this card.
All right. So it opened with do I have yeah. This is the so real quick. The before I start with the card. So did you see the Goto and Juice Robinson match?
No.
Okay, that match was great. I thought that was the best match they had all week. The Ishii and Hanare match was really, really good. But Goto and Juice Robinson wrestled on Friday for the Never Championship. And it was one of those matches where, number one, as you're watching the match, you're just kind of going like, this is the match for Juice Robinson to win. And he didn't. But it just felt like that. Now, that crowd was so into it. That match had the most heat of any match that, I haven't watched Arena Mexico this weekend, but of the matches, of the stuff that I saw this weekend, that had by far the most heat of anything, way more than anything on Greatest Royal Rumble, way more than anything on the New Japan show today. The crowd was just with it. They were so into Juice Robinson. They were in Goto too. And it was one of these, it was a long match. It was a basic match. Like there was no big flashy moves, but everything was solid. And, Juice Robinson's got a lot of charisma. And Goto, when he's motivated, is one of those really solid workers. And I thought it was a hell of a match. Unfortunately, the direction was what the direction was. Juice Robinson lost. Goto beat him. And then it looks like they're going to do a three-way program for the Never title with Goto, Michael Elgin, who issued a challenge, and Taichi, which is interesting. They usually don't do three-way matches there, and it may not be a three-way match. But it could be. But but both Elgin and Taichi are obviously going to be contenders because they both came out afterwards and they both kind of got involved. So that was the deal on that show. The show on Friday was a lot better than this show. The New Japan show on Friday was a good show. So this opened with Yuji Nagata and Ren Narita against Shota Umino and Tomoyuki Oka. Predictable match, good, not great. As you would expect, Nagata got the win with a crossface, basically, on Umino. And Umino's really good. Narita's really good. Umino did this great drop kick on Ren Narita. So this was a nice, fun opener. I would say this match was about what I would have expected it to be. Then Jushin Liger, Tiger Mask, Ryusuke Taguchi, and David Finlay against Shoyo, Rocky Romero, and Jay White. And it ended up with Finlay pinning Rocky Romero with a stunner. You just didn't... Sho and Yo, like, I don't even know if they even got in. If they were in, it was like just for seconds. Jay White and Finlay were coming off a very good match and kind of did, nothing here. This match was a big disappointment. Just too much talent, ended too quick, and too many guys like Sho and Yo, barely getting even in. Then Togi Makabe and Toa Henare against Toru Yano and Tomohiro Ishii. And like I said, Ishii and Henare on earlier in the week, that would have been the 24th, they had a really good match, and they were going back and forth, and it was Henare's highest profile match and probably his best match to date. So they come back on this show, which is a bigger show, and they're in there again, and you kind of expect, well, they're going to follow up. And it was just short, and Ishii got the brainbuster on Henare and pinned him, like one brainbuster with a lariat, got a lariat and then a brainbuster. And it was like after that great brawl back and forth where Henare had Ishii on the ropes and everything, they do this short match and Ishii just wins clean. And it was like whatever momentum that Henare had, it was just like it made him feel like he was nothing. Then it was Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, Chase Owens, and Yujiro Takahashi against Zack Sabre Jr., Taka Michinoku, Taichi, and Takashi Iizuka. And again, just way too short. And Zack Sabre made Chase Owens submit. Omega and Ibushi did some cool stuff, but they were not in a lot at all. And Sabre wasn't in much. It was okay. I mean, it wasn't too bad, but when you look at the talent in this match, it was nothing special. Then it was Tanahashi, Michael Elgin, Kushida, and Juice Robinson against Okada, Hirooki Goto, Yoshihashi, and Will Ospreay. And again, this was a good match, but it only went 10 minutes. And when you consider the talent involved, you got some great talent here. And I can't say Tanahashi and Okada was kind of like the focal point. And when they were in with each other, it was good. And again, you had Robinson coming off this really big match, and he just didn't really do much. Ospreay and Kushida were great when they were in there with each other, but it wasn't much. And Tanahashi just beat Yoshihashi with a high fly flow, which is fine. Tanahashi probably should get the win. He's challenging for the title. And then they did Taichi attack Goto after the match with a mic stand. And then Okada and Tanahashi had a couple of brawls. One of them, actually, they had a quick pull apart. Then Okada left, and then Tanahashi's out there. And then Okada comes sprinting down, and he ran over the photographers to get at Tanahashi. They did another pull apart, and, broke free and things like that. Both tried the tombstone on each other. Neither could get it. And then Geto pulled Okada away. That was probably the most excitement of the show. That was pretty decent stuff.
And it wasn't that great a pull apart either, which should tell you about the state of the rest of the show.
Yeah.
It was fine, but it was not like
No, it wasn't anything spectacular.
No, it was just they did a quick angle to set up the match.
Yeah. Bushi and Desperado, DQ finish when Kanemaru interfered, and then Hiromu Takahashi made the save. That match was going along fine, and then that DQ finish kind of like took it down. And then you had Hiromu Takahashi against Kanemaru in a singles match, and it started off pretty good, and it was going pretty good, but it was like it never really got into, like where you expect a Takahashi singles match to go to. It was not there at all, and it was just starting to catch up. And then Marty Asami got thrown into Bushi at ringside by what's his name, by Kanemaru. So then Desperado hits the ring, and he's beating on Takahashi. Kanemaru gets the whiskey in his mouth to spray the whiskey. Takahashi moves. He hits Desperado. Then Bushi comes in, blows the mist in Kanemaru's eyes, and Takahashi wins with a time bomb. This was a good match, but, not what you would expect from a singles match with these two. And shorter, also. And then you had the Sonata and Evil against Archer and Smith match that was... So the story of the match is that they gave a killer bomb off the apron onto a table. Sonata went through the table, so he's out of the picture. So both of them are beating on Evil for several minutes, and it didn't really get that much heat. Like you would expect, that's like a old, two guys, two big foreigners beating up on the Japanese guy. And going for the championship, the guy kicking out of the near falls. I don't know. It wasn't that great, for one thing. There was something missing as far as the work went, but the people just weren't into that, which I think hurt it a lot. And then they finally actually hit the Magic Killer, not the Killer Bomb, which is. The Magic Killer was Gallows and Anderson's move, and then when they left, it became Sonata and Evil's move. So they hit Sonata and Evil with their own move, the Magic Killer on Evil, but he kicked out. But the crowd did react to that one. And then they went for the Killer Bomb, and that's when Sonata recovered and hit Lance Archer with a springboard drop kick to break it up. And then he kept going for the Skull End, and it was pretty good from that point. And then it ended up with Archer. What happened with Archer? Archer got run into a chair or something, and it was Smith in the ring. And Sonata hit Archer with a plancha, and Evil used, the STO, everything is evil, on Smith. And it was, again, somewhat of a flat finish in a way. So, all these matches were average to good, but nothing, this would, even if it was a WWE show or something like that, at best you would say, I think a lot of people would give it a thumbs in the middle, and a lot of people would give it a thumbs down, and that's what I would say for this one too. Just, it's not really the big show of the tour. The big show of the tour, there's actually two of them, and they're going to be on the 3rd and the 4th this coming week in a couple days. But still, you did have 2 championship matches, and this was still considered something of a big show. And I thought, especially when you had that main event, and the main event just didn't click.
What do we got for those 2 shows?
Tanahashi and Okada is. I don't know. Let me get the card. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Oh wait, I don't have it here. I don't have it.
What's the big stuff?
Hold on. I can find it just a second. Okay. So the Thursday show It's Yota Tsuji and Shota Umino against Chase Owens and Yujiro, which Chase Owens and Yujiro will win. But Yota Tsuji is really good. That could be that could be a decent match. Ren Narita, Oka, and Nagata against Taguchi, Tiger Mask, and Liger, which should be fine. Shoyo and Rocky Romero against Iizuka, Archer, and Smith. Probably should be okay. Hanari, Elgin, Makabe, Finlay, and Juice against Yoshihashi Yano, Ishii, Jay White, and Goto. Never six-man tag team titles, Tangaloa, Tamatonga, and Fale against Marty Scurll and the Young Bucks. We'll see. And then Hiromu Takahashi, Bushi, Sonata, Evil, and Naito against Desperado, Kanemaru, Taichi, Zack Sabre, and Suzuki. Tanahashi and Kushida against Will Ospreay and Okada. They had a match the other day that was really good. I would suspect this match would also be really good. Kota Ibushi, Cody singles match. If you remember at the Tokyo Dome, they had a hell of a match. Omega and Hangman Page as the main event, which is a very surprising main event. And also, as you probably know, Page is hurting. Page didn't even work last night. Friday night, they were in a six-man tag. It was Young Bucks and Page against, I believe it was the Kingdom. And the Young Bucks worked like 95% of the match. Page did very little. And then last night, Page was supposed to wrestle Punishment Martinez, and they did a big brawl and basically never had the match. So I'm sure when they laid this out, the idea is for Omega to get a big win in a great match, and Page... Page has really come along, and it's going to be tough. If the guy's got, I don't know what the injury is. It's a groin injury, but I don't know the severity because he wasn't getting checked until I think he's getting checked tomorrow. But that's going to be pretty tough. And then the big one would really be the Friday show, and that is Liger, Tiger Mask, Taguchi against Uemura, Narita, and Umino. Same basic stuff. Nagata and Oka against Yujiro and Owens, which is okay. Shoyo and Romero against Iizuka, Taichi, and Taka, which is okay. Makabe and Hanari against Yano and Ishii, which I just saw. Hopefully it'll be better this time. Elgin, Finlay, and Juice against Yoshihashi, Jay White, and Goto, which should be okay. Then all of LIJ against Suzuki Gun, same stuff that they've been doing. Then it's a Bullet Club, which is the Tongans, Tamatonga, Tangaloa, Fale, along with Ibushi and Omega against the Young Bucks, Marty Scurll, Cody, and Hangman Page, which is that match probably should be great. Ospreay Kushida, which if it's anything but great, would be a huge disappointment. And Okada Tanahashi, which is the main event for the championship, which, let's face it, Okada Tanahashi is one of the greatest rivalries in the history of wrestling. They haven't wrestled in a long, long time. Tanahashi's not as good as he was due to all his injuries. Okada, is... as good as he ever was. Okada's fantastic. I suspect that match will be fantastic because Tanahashi on one leg is still Tanahashi as far as like in a big match because he's a fantastic mental worker, and Okada's the best in the business. And so the Friday show looks pretty good. Thursday show, we'll see. But a lot of wrestling for this weekend, and also this coming week there's going to be the WWE pay-per-view, which we talked about, Backlash show. So that's going to be a pretty busy weekend.
Batista's movie.
You see it?
I have not seen it, no.
Okay. I did see it last night. I don't want to talk about the movie, but it grossed... I'll know the gross tomorrow afternoon, but roughly $250 million in its opening weekend, which makes it and $630 million, including worldwide. So
number one.
The biggest grossing first weekend of any movie in the history of movies. So it's not really Batista's movie, but he
well, no, but he's
He's got a real part in the movie,
Yeah.
though. Yeah, I mean, he's a real guy in the movie. It's not just like a small role. He is one of the guys a lot of guys all over the place, and he's one of them. But it was a good movie. I mean, it was definitely a gripping, exciting movie.
And he did talk a couple of days ago about how they'd talked about him coming in to be Ronda's partner, and they talked and talked and talked, and then they stopped calling. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, well, the original idea was The Rock, then it was Batista, and then they just decided that Kurt made more sense with their stories, so they went with Kurt, and it did. And also, I'm gonna guess, you got to remember, even though the match turned out fantastic as it was, when you're doing it, I think that the idea is that it may not have turned out fantastic, and if it wasn't going to, or if Ronda and Stephanie were going to need some help in carrying the match, and it was going to be Triple H, it would be better for Triple H to work with Kurt, because Kurt is more versatile than Batista, and also Kurt's been, neither have been working regularly, but Batista hasn't worked in a long time. Kurt's worked a little bit. Kurt's better than Batista, that's all. I'm not saying he's a bigger draw or anything, and I know Kurt's body's all banged up, more than Batista's is, but I think that if you're gonna do a WrestleMania match and you're really unsure about people, and your pick is going to be, and you could make the argument Batista's a big movie star and they could have gone with him, and they could have, it's just a choice. I think that you probably would be more comfortable with Kurt, but in that spot, so that's probably why. And Batista, Batista wants to work with Triple H at next year's WrestleMania as his retirement match. Will they do it? I mean, they may. It's not a bad idea as far as the match goes. Batista retirement, Hall of Fame, and all that. They asked him to go in the Hall of Fame this year, and he didn't want to because he still wants a final run.
And the Bellator show last night, we had the big Fedor versus Frank Mir fight, which Fedor finished in, I think it was under a minute.
48 seconds.
48 seconds.
I have not.
All those abs did not help Frank Mir.
Well, I knew it was going to be the first guy to hit the other guy hard. You know what I mean? And it didn't matter which one it was, because the deal with both those guys is that they don't recover like they used to because of their age. But they, Mir hits hard enough that he could have, because guys have been hurting Fedor in when they hit him in most of his fights lately. Mir the same way. So Fedor got him first. So it's going to be Fedor against Chael, and then the other bracket will be it'll be Matt Mitrione against the winner of the King Mo and Ryan Bader match that'll be on May 12th in San Jose. And then you got the championship. I mean, with Fedor and Chael, I would expect Fedor to beat Chael. So Fedor could go to the championship in this thing, that would be pretty cool. As far as like a big comeback and everything like that, even though who knows? I mean, any of these guys can win. It's heavyweight division. There's no super heavyweights in there. I mean, the best fighter is Ryan Bader, who's a light heavyweight. Mo is really barely a middleweight his walk-around weight's like 210. So the guys who are 210 usually fight at 185. And, that's, they're a lot smaller than, but Mo's competed and done well as a heavyweight. I mean, reasonably well. So, and I think Ryan Bader could as well. So, who knows what's going to happen. Now, I have not seen the show, but people have absolutely raved about the show to me. The key stuff that I've heard is, the fights were quick and good and explosive, but I heard Moreno and John McCarthy as an announced team were great, which I can believe. John McCarthy's really good. The good thing about John McCarthy when he does the post-match interviews is so many of the guys, I think post-match interviews in MMA are very difficult because you don't know what you've got to work with. You have some guys who can talk. You
got to carry a lot of guys.
Yeah, a lot of guys aren't. And John is very confident. He knows his shit. and he's pretty good at carrying guys. He knows what kind of questions to ask. And the other thing is John has a certain respect from fighters to which a lot of people don't have. And if John asks those guys a question, they're going to answer it. So he's pretty good he's really good in that role. And the other thing is UFC just kind of, they've fallen into a rut in the sense that they just kind of do the same thing in every show. Every show's identical. And Bellator just does a lot of new things, and they have, the different announced teams, and it's just a different feel to the show. And it's an average Bellator show is with no names, certainly a very missable show. I mean, this show itself, when it came to, aside from Fedor and Mir, which only went a minute, less than a minute, but they weren't really big names. I mean, you had Naaman Gracie and who else? Not really. But what was the guy who was in whatever? But the Rafael Lovato, who was undefeated, was in there. I mean, it was really a lot of pretty much squash matches in a lot of ways. I mean, you knew. I mean, again, in MMA, you don't always know, but there was one guy who was expected to win in every fight except for the main event, and they won quick. But the whole production, the whole show, and Chicago, they had a big crowd. It felt like a big deal. It had the show had a good feel to it. I mean, Bellator's certainly been struggling in the ratings of late. The last Bellator show the number was just horrendous. I'm sure this one will be well up, and they promoted this one higher, heavier. I would, I hope that they can get up to like before. I would say with the Fedor Frank Mir fight, you would want about 1 million or plus viewers, and now I don't know if they're going to get that. But if they get under 800,000 for Fedor and Frank Mir with all the promotion they've done, it's going to be tough. And I don't know. I mean, they're on 2 channels, so the 2 channels combined ratings probably should hit 800,000, if not more. But I don't know. It's at least they had what people were telling me was a really good show.
All right, let's jump into the mailbag here. Mailbag.
So real quick before we get to the mailbag. So a couple of days ago on the mailbag or whatever, somebody asked about the Andre the Giant Lawler match, and did Jerry Lawler beat Andre the Giant by countout? And in fact, that match, the match that was in that story, the actual result of the match was Andre the Giant won. It was a 1977 match in Louisville, Kentucky, where it was a big controversial thing. So the backstory for people who don't know, even though we've said it, is that the Apter mags, which I guess is what they're called, Stanley Weston's magazine, that Bill Apter was the most famous guy in 1977. Jim Cornette, I believe, was the photographer. I don't know that 100%, but it's Louisville, and Jim Cornette was the photographer in Louisville, so I would be pretty sure it was Jim Cornette's photos. So he sent in photos of a match with Andre and Jerry Lawler, and, back in New York, they made up a story. And I think maybe Lawler was involved as well, because Lawler got the tongue lashing. And it was, the story was the night a midget beat Andre the Giant. And they gave this whole fake story to the match that Andre the Giant lost by countout to Jerry Lawler, who was getting pushed in Tennessee and all that. And at the NWA meetings that came very shortly after this, Vince McMahon was furious. This is Vince's father, Vincent James McMahon, not today's Vince McMahon. Since he booked Andre, and the rule of thumb is Andre could never lose. And, he was really mad because I think when Andre did lose, the magazines kind of covered it up, because Andre was never supposed to lose. I mean, when Andre lost to the Sheik, I think that's the only guy Andre lost to in the United States. And he lost in Japan a couple times. But one was when before he was booked by Vince. So some of those losses, that was predating the Andre the Giant Superstar era or World Traveler era. And Vince is just furious about, them saying, that result in that story and everything, and yelled at Lawler and probably yelled at, I don't think Apter would have been at the meeting, but I'm sure he wasn't happy with Apter or whoever whoever it was, wasn't happy with the magazine. And, the magazine and Vince Sr., had their ups and downs since 63 anyway. But anyway, so the result of that match was that Andre won by DQ when he gave Lawler the splash, and Phil Hickerson and Dennis Condrey interfered for the DQ, and that was that. So, yep, he did not win the match by, Lawler did not beat Andre by count out.
All right, hey, this person here says, after WCW folded, it's generally considered that WWE and the industry as a whole went into a bit of a slump because of the fact that WWE had no competition. By
the way, real quick, it reminds me of something.
Yes.
They did a big thing WrestleMania week for the sponsors, and Paul Levesque was talking about how they, the developmental system and the idea of opening up more developmental systems all over the world, territories, because since the territory era ended, there's been no place to develop talent except for the Performance Center. Yet, look at all this talent. We have more talent in wrestling than we've ever had, and very little of that came from the Performance Center.
It's true.
I mean, we have so much talent. It's like since WCW and everything, those guys folded, there's no place to, he said since the territories folded. The territories folded in most of them folded in the 80s. And somehow they've been developing.
Virtually every single one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis went a little bit longer, and Don Owens went to 91. But, put it this way, the last of the territories would have been, of the traditional territories, was Memphis, and that was done in 97. Most of them were done in the 80s. And somehow, there's been talent created. And granted, WWE, their relationship with OVW was a godsend for them if you look at the long-term results. And the Performance Center will pay off, and they needed it. And it's, I like the fact that they're bringing in guys from all over the world and looking at making, UK superstar and Australia superstar and, India superstar and China superstar. Obviously, they're focusing on the Middle East because of the money, and China and India because of the population. That's what they're looking at. And hopefully they can get someone and bring someone in. It's a slow process. They've had, but they're, the biggest success in NXT constantly has been the non-homegrown guys. I mean, you look at every one of these guys are guys that were developed elsewhere. And, the indie scene is the strongest it's ever been. And there's plenty of work for the guys who have names on the indie scene. I mean, they're getting their, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is they're looking for, usually, 2 to 3 nights a week of work. Most of them are getting more bookings than they have dates, and, making a living. I mean, the name guys are making a living. I mean, there's not a lot of guys making a living on the indie scene, but the name guys are. But I mean, the whole point is that there's plenty of shows, and if you're really, guys that are getting, there's all kinds of guys in the UK that got great. There's all kinds of guys in the US that got great. But anyway, let's do this question.
All right, so after WCW folded, it's generally considered WWE and the industry as a whole went into a bit of a slump because of the fact that WWE had no competition. Even though there really isn't a viable number 2 like WCW was.
Well, there is New Japan.
That's the question. You think the combination of New Japan, Ring of Honor, and the Indies is enough competition for WWE that they've had to step up their game in the last couple of years, leading to gains in business and especially quality in-ring action?
Well, they don't want to be left behind and have people say they're the worst wrestling. They've been way, way, way more aggressive in recruiting guys that are good that years earlier, they would have never even touched. For size reasons and things like that. So absolutely 100% that the strengthening of the indie scene has made WWE up its game. Absolutely, without question. And I mean, the perfect example of the fact that they respond, they respond to competition is, NXT, trying to be the super indie to compete with the rise of popularity of Ring of Honor, and the UK thing, which is totally every move they make is based on the moves that are made by ITV. ITV does a big pilot, they sign a whole bunch of guys, and they're going to do a weekly show. ITV falls out, the weekly show's gone. ITV's back this, in 2 weeks doing their first taping, and now they're back, taping that King of the Ring special, and again ready to do weekly shows again. If the ITV thing is renewed for forever, they're going to be doing weekly TV. If the ITV thing is gone in 10 weeks, who knows what they're going to do? So all of that, yes, WWE is, yes, there's a clear and obvious reaction, and it's the best thing for the industry is to have, obviously have a lot of strong talent on the indie scene, because it's more shows to draw, and it also forces WWE to keep pace and sign a lot of those guys. Because look at you look at those guys. I mean, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Ricochet, all those guys. How many years ago did they all get, tryouts? And I just thinking examples. Like, remember when Eddie Edwards went there? And Eddie Edwards is really good, even though by going to TNA, his name's kind of fallen off. But he's really good. And he went there, and they were just like, most of the coaches liked him, but the big guy didn't, for whatever reason, didn't like him and Davey Richards, and they didn't get signed. Like, if he came around today and he was on the other side, he was a Ring of Honor big star, and he was ready to come up, he would not only be in NXT, but he would be a top guy in NXT. He'd be in there like the level of Kyle O'Reilly, which is, tag team champion right now. And, Adam Cole went to a tryout how many years ago? And now, Adam Cole's a superstar in NXT. There's so many guys like that. Ono they got rid of, then they bring him back. And he's not a superstar there, but he's like a good coach and good, just, utility guy and everything like that. Ricochet, everyone knows the story with Ricochet, and he's going to be, I think Ricochet is going to be their biggest star in just a couple of months. If he, he's already getting the biggest reactions at the house shows.
This person here says, during the famous 2007 promo where Ric Flair announced that he would never retire, he mentioned that he'd recently got involved with statewide politics and opened his own marketing company. Was Rick actually considering entering politics, and how far did that go?
Rick was very much interested in politics, and then some people had a talk with him, and it was like your whole life would be an open book, and his life, it would be. It's like it'd be too open of a book. It wouldn't be. I don't think like the idea of Ric Flair, who because he can talk and he looks a certain way and he's got a lot of popularity in the Carolinas, sounds good as a politician on paper, but in reality, it was. I never thought that would be a very good idea. But yeah, he considered it. But I think that they explained to him, how deep everybody would go into his life. And there's probably nothing that people don't know, but, as far as like a national, all of the financial problems and everything like that, it's just like, not to mention everything. It wouldn't be a good idea.
This person here says, any word on why the Big Show was not at the greatest Royal Rumble after being featured on the Rumble advertising?
Okay, so Big Show was injured about 3 weeks ago. Again, when he was coming back from his injury, he got re-injured. So that's why he wasn't in the match.
Well, that's no good.
Yeah, I don't know how severe, but it was severe enough that they wanted him in this match a lot. You could tell by look at all those big guys they brought in, and except for Khali, he's the biggest guy. Maybe Khali was the guy who was supposed to be Ultimate Warrior. I didn't think of that. So, but anyway,
don't think so.
Yeah, maybe the guy asked for Andre the Giant, and they brought in.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah, and they brought in Big Show and Khali. But anyway, Big Show got hurt. Hopefully, it's not too serious.
This person says it was reported the FBI met with Fedor last week while he was in the U.S. about his connection to Trump and his lawyer Michael Cohen. who I did not know were players in Affliction years back. And
Michael Cohen was a big player in Affliction. They just used his name. Trump was
sure. They want to know the background of this.
Michael Cohen made the deal for Trump, and in doing so was one of the head guys at Affliction. And yeah, now he's a big national name. And Trump was said to be one of the owners. He never actually put any money up. They used his name, and they gave him an ownership stake. I mean, he did have an ownership stake, and he cut promos. Bryan and I were at one of his promos. It was hilarious. I mean, it was like, this guy's up there, and it's like, I've been around, some of the most bullshit wrestlers, guys from the old days that were so completely full of shit liars that, you know what I mean? And I saw Trump, and even by that standard, I mean, I'm just listening to this guy, and there isn't like a thing that was believable that he said. I mean, he was just so completely full of it. We have the money and we'll beat UFC, and it's like, that's even but the best one was, it was a show where, and Fedor was on the show. I think it was the Fedor, was it Fedor and Andre Arlovsky maybe was the main event?
I don't remember.
Okay, but Fedor was on the show. And Trump said that, all the tickets are sold out. And as soon as he's done, Jimmy Lennon Jr. comes out and goes, "Fans, there are plenty of tickets left." So.
This person here wants to know, how big was Kenta Kobashi's return from cancer in 2007 for Noah? And did the match exceed your expectations with Misawa versus Akiyama and Takayama?
I mean, it was considered a really big match. I cannot say it exceeded my expectations, that one. I mean, it was considered big, but, by that point, they were all past their peak, except for Akiyama, who's, by the way, freaking Akiyama in the Carnival. Guy's so great. But the Carnival tournament's been I haven't watched a lot of it. I watched one match of it, actually. That was just really, but
well, this person wants to know your thoughts on the dream match finale of Kento Miyahara and Naomichi Marufuji.
Yeah, it's starting in about an hour, half hour. Yeah, I think that's Kento Miyahara and Naomichi Marufuji. What a great match. I think I think it may be like just absolutely incredible. Yeah.
This person here says, Dave mentioned Vince McMahon would likely sell the company if he got a $4 billion offer. If he were to sell, do you think he would stipulate that Hunter and Stephanie run the company or require they have majority ownership? Well, he couldn't have majority ownership if he sold the company.
If he sold the company, he ain't going to have a majority ownership. You don't do that. People don't buy companies with that stipulation. It doesn't work that way. Now, who knows? It depends on the people who run the company. The people who buy the company are going to put their own people in. Now, they may think, the reality is that who can run the wrestling side? I mean, Triple H will not be the CEO if somebody else runs the company, most likely, because he doesn't have the business background. He doesn't have the experience in that aspect of it. He doesn't have the degree and all that. Will he be the guy who runs talent relations and runs the wrestling side? There's a very good chance he will, because he's the guy coming in and a big company. Let's just say Fox buys them, okay? Just because Fox has had interest in doing so. Let's say Fox buys the company, or WMEIMG, for that matter, buys the company. I mean, you can see what happened with UFC. Some of the guys stay. Some of the major executives that build the company go. And I think it would be the same thing. Triple H may stay because there's not going to be a guy in those companies that know how to run the talent end of a wrestling company. Stephanie, hit or miss, honestly. I mean, because her role is basically to be the replacement for Vince as the face of the company. Chief brand, she's the front person. So they may want to keep her, kind of like Dana, but she's not as big a deal as Dana, realistically. She's not thought of synonymously and all that. They may want to keep her. she says all the right things and smart woman and everything like that. But there's no lock. There's no guarantees. I think Triple H would have a better shot, but there's no guarantees with him either. But, yeah.
All right, everybody, on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, however, after Raw to talk of that show, the build to Backlash. We'll do more mailbag questions, talk about the news. We had a Friday show, as noted, if you want the full coverage of the greatest Royal Rumble. We got a lot of stuff coming up tomorrow. And that is it, so check it out, and we'll talk to you again after a while.